There's a new Netflix movie called School for Good and Evil. This movie is 2.5 hours long. I don't have the attention span for this. This may take me 4 days. The movie starts with the introduction of Agatha and Sophie. Agatha is a girl with curly black hair who lives next to a graveyard with her mum. And Sophie is a girl with a Targaryen blonde hair that dresses as a princess whilst living with her dad, brother, and evil stepmother. Okay, we're not sure if she's actually evil, but it's a movie about fairy tales and she's a stepmom, so I'm just gonna assume. Whilst everyone in the town thinks Agatha is a witch, then there's Sophie, who's the only one who believes that she's a princess. There's some delusion in the water of this town apparently. Both of the girls live in a town where everyone hates them, except for each other. The girls go to a town's bookshop and meet the librarian, who suggests some new fairy tale book. In the corner of a page is a sigil, and Sophie asks what it is. The librarian says the sigil is for the School of Good and Evil. The librarian also tells them a story about a girl who got kidnapped in the middle of the night and was forced to go to School for Good and Evil. Then Sophie is weirdly excited about this, and then she says, oh, I want to be kidnapped. I don't know if she thinks this is one of those I was kidnapped by One Direction fanfictions, but I can tell you, Sophie, being kidnapped in real life is not great. Later on in the day, Sophie's stepmom says she has to drop out of school and get a job to support her family. So Sophie tells Agatha, I'm going to run away. Agatha tells her that's a horrible idea and makes her promise not to do that. Okay, everyone watching, who wants to place a bet whether or not Sophie listens and doesn't run away? If you thought she didn't run away, you're an idiot. Sophie then goes to the wishing tree and wishes to go to School for Good and Evil. As she's running away, Agatha catches her and the two of them argue, and then an evil dark shadow tries to drag Sophie off. Sophie is ecstatic as the creepy shadow drags her through the dirty forest. Agatha tries to grab onto her and tries to stop Sophie from, being kidnapped. The shadow eventually lets go of Sophie. Sophie's really disappointed. Again, someone needs to tell her the consequences of kidnapping. Just as Agatha thinks she's safe, a giant skeleton bird comes down and drags them off. Sophie is thrilled with this outcome as they get closer and closer to the School for Good and Evil, until only Agatha gets dropped off at the School for Good and Sophie gets dropped off at the School for Evil. Everyone is immediately watching Sophie after she gets dropped into the water because she has Draco Malfoy hair, whilst everyone else in the school has dark black hair. Agatha, on the other hand, gets instantly bullied for not wearing a ball gown by a group of girls. I thought they were meant to be good. How are you instantly bullying someone you met 4 seconds ago? Sophie and Agatha instantly try to explain to the deans that there must have been a mistake. Sophie insists she's in the wrong school, while Agatha insists she's not meant to be in either school and she just wants to go home. Both of the deans reject the notion that the girls have put forward. This is kidnapping. Even for Sophie, who wanted to go to the school, neither of their parents consented to this. Agatha doesn't want to be that at all. You can't go around dragging off random children in the dead of night. I mean, literally you can, because that's what they've done, but morally it's a big social no-no to kidnap children. Now they're at orientation, with the two schools split. The boys at the School for Good do some dumb sword performance. There's a guy called Gregor, who is the son of Prince Charming, and drops his sword, eye contact with Agatha. Then another guy backflips from an indoor balcony. This is Tedros. I'm not going to lie, for the majority of this film I thought his name was Tetris. Anyway, he is the son of King Arthur. Sophie likes him because he's a prince, and that's the only real criteria. I forgot to give a proper introduction to these two groups of girls. These are the mean girls, and these are the mean girls dressed as princesses. There is no real difference between the two groups, other than outfits. Agatha is ruined with this lot, and Sophie is roomed with these three. They are slightly more memorable. Still don't know their names. The first thing Sophie did upon arriving to this room was insult Witch Free's mum, calling her an ugly old hag. Great way to start a friendship. Whilst this is happening, Agatha is locked in her room. She then climbed onto the rooftop to try and get to the School for Evil to see Sophie. Agatha is then chased by a Cupid shooting a bow and arrow. This is meant to be the school for children. I looked it up, ages 12 to 16. There is a weird baby man who is employed by the school who is shooting at children. Back to Sophie, she's about to get stabbed for insulting Witch Free's mum. Agatha makes it to Sophie before she gets stabbed, and they go to the headmaster in this weird tower between the schools. In the tower, they find a book that narrates and writes itself, and the headmaster is also in there. The headmaster said the only way for Sophie to get into the School for Good is if she receives true love's kiss. Sophie then decides her true love is Tedros. Then we see Gregor again. We like Gregor. Gregor wants to go home, just like Agatha. Gregor doesn't think he's cut out to be a prince. He talks about how he's already failed twice at the school. If you fail 3 classes, then they turn you into a random object. This school needs to be shut down. The good school goes for a walk in the garden. Whilst walking through the garden, they found these pink flowers, which from a distance are harmless, but when you get closer to them, they bite you. This scares Gregor and he runs off. Agatha chases after him. Apparently running away counts as his 3rd fail, and a black cloud attacks him and rips him apart. I would like to reiterate, this is meant to be a school for good, for children. Then everyone just moves on to the next class. The only person that seems to even mention the fact that a child just died is Agatha. The next class, they are making wishes in a lake. Agatha wishes that she could just help someone after she failed to save Gregor. Suddenly, a girl emerges from the water. She says she failed 3 times over 100 years ago, so they turned her into fish. But Agatha set her free. Again, how have no parents complained about the school? I feel like my mother would complain if she sent me to school and I never came back. Suddenly, one of the skeleton birds land in front of them. Everyone else runs away, but Agatha realizes the bird is actually Gregor. This gave Agatha hope that she could return him back to normal. That hope is almost immediately ripped away as Tedros throws Excalibur into the bird, now permanently killing Gregor. Poor Gregor. Agatha then punches him. Good for you, Agatha. Has this school never heard of detention before? Instead, they doomed a child. Plus, they just started the school year and they're already killing off children. Brilliant school. Really, you should really send your children here. Meanwhile, at the school for bad, they're meant to be showing off their gifts because every villain is meant to have a unique ability. Most of the abilities are quite boring. Until they get to witch number 3. Remember her? She had the tattoo on her body that comes off and is some form of bird that sets on fire. Said bird then attacks Sophie. Just before Sophie gets attacked, an army of bees burst through a window, almost killing the firebird, which is apparently attached to witch number 3, almost killing her. The dean of the evil school stops Sophie. Surprisingly, no one died in the school for evil today. Can't say the same for the other school. Eventually, Sophie loses her hair after the dean cuts it off of her. This apparently makes Tedros fall madly in love with her. Sophie and Tedros get together. Everyone in both schools disagree that they should be together, but the headmaster said he will allow it if they can prove it true love. So he puts them in a garden from earlier on 2 opposite ends and said if they can meet in the middle, then they are allowed to date. Sophie runs into a bit of trouble whilst in the garden. Agatha saves her. Sophie and Tedros meet up, and just before they are properly reunited, Tedros is attacked by a scarecrow and loses Excalibur. Tedros pleads with Sophie to hand him the sword, but for some reason Sophie just goes, no. Agatha runs and gives him the sword, saving the day yet again. Tedros dumps Sophie because she's a coward, and Sophie blames Agatha for getting in the way, and they all leave. Who would have guessed? After you leave someone for dead, their love for you dies. All she had to do was pass this boy a sword. He did not ask her to fight. Mister, if I only had a brain. Sophie and Agatha are no longer talking. This gives Raphael the chance to bring Sophie to the dark side. Sophie then gives up her beauty so she can have unlimited power. With her new powers, she then turns all the teachers into dolls, whilst all the princes and princesses are at a ball. The students at the school for good find the teachers, and Tedros realizes it must be Sophie, as she is the only one powerful enough to do this. Tedros convinces everyone in the school for good to take down Sophie before she gets more powerful. Agatha says this is an awful idea and she doesn't want Sophie to get hurt, but Tedros ignores her and they all head to the school for evil anyway. Agatha turns into a bird and gets to the school for evil first before everyone else in an attempt to warn Sophie. Turns out the school for evil is having their first ever ball because villains don't dance. Tedros and the squad, I don't know what to call them. Tedros and the squad shoot arrows at the school for evil, but they all turn into flowers. According to the rules of this world, evil attacks and good defends. And because Tedros' troops attacked first, that makes them evil, which makes Sophie and her friends good. So the schools for good and evil switch places, Sophie becomes beautiful again, and then there is a big battle scene. Sophie then leaves mid-battle and goes to the head teacher's tower where she finds out Raphael has been pretending to be his brother for all these years, and Raphael actually killed him 200 years ago. The reason he has been masquerading as him is so that he can slowly corrupt what it means to be good and blur the lines between good and evil, so it's easier for him to take over. The school for good has been murdering children for centuries, so this does make sense. He then tells Sophie that he is actually her true love, which I find incredibly weird. because this child is 15. This man is like at least 300 years old. This man has just admitted that he kidnapped her to make him his bride. Jail. Tedros and Agatha talk, and Agatha convinces him to let her talk to Sophie. Since his plan did not work out, Tedros agrees because he likes Agatha. The only reason he likes Agatha is she is not like other girls. I hate this man. Agatha makes it to the tower after Rafal and Sophie kiss, which apparently destroys both of the schools. Sophie starts to regret what she did and wants Agatha back. Rafal tries to stab Agatha, but Sophie jumps in the way to save her. While Sophie's dying on the floor, Agatha grabs Excalibur. Oh yeah, at some point Tedros turned up too, but he's not important. Agatha stabs Rafal and then she kisses Sophie, which apparently is enough to save everyone. And they all lived happily ever after. The end. I'm not even joking. The movie was okay, but it's a bit disappointing that they don't really lead into any form of legacy about these kids' parents. They briefly mention heritage for a few of them, but most of these people could have been picked up off the street. Other than Tedros having Excalibur, there was not really anything to connect any of these people to traditional fairy tales. This really could have been a movie about the school for good and evil elves, or goblins, or fairies. Oh wait, they're already doing that. You get my point. The random name dropping they had in this movie made no sense. At some point they mentioned that this boy is the son of Captain Hook, but if you told me this was the brother of Mavis from Hotel Transylvania, I would have believed you. So the movie was okay. Justice for Gregor, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!